Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. So this panel is the Art of Innovation, Collaboration, AI for Artists. My name is Aaron Shackelford. I'm a Director of Programming at Duke Arts in Durham, North Carolina. And we're thrilled here to have what's going to be a conversation. I'm joined today by three outstanding thinkers, artists, creatives who are approaching the use of digital technologies, not just AI, but a range of these tools in their creative practice in one form or another. Now, if you read your session description, we are launching today with a welcoming commentary by a digital innovation leader. I've got the welcoming part down, is about it. But I'm here to say hello and to really just serve as a facilitator for today's conversation. And I think we're really best served to start this conversation by listening to the artists, to the creatives, and using their work as a point of departure for today's discussion. I do want to emphasize that this is a discussion today. We have a wide array of creative practices and viewpoints up here on the stage, and probably even more so in the room if you're here today interested in this topic. And we're not here for definitive answers, obviously, and we're not even necessarily here for hands-on tools per se. This is the conversation about discussing, questioning, and hopefully inspiring a thought or a practice in one direction or another. We're here to discuss collaboration, both specific case studies and the larger aesthetic and philosophical approaches that our panelists have reflected upon in their practice and in their research. As many of you may have heard APAP President Lisa Richards-Toney at the opening plenary, one of the themes for this year's conference that I've been fortunate enough to serve as a co-chair on is the idea of art as vital infrastructure. This means a wider and more open set of conversations with the many areas that the arts engage with, including technology and AI, which my fellow panelists have been thinking about and doing for many years. I do want to mention here at the outset that we all recognize that there are a bevy of ethical and legal issues that accompany AI projects, both in the arts and then the models that utilize or even exploit the work of artists. If you were at the Wavelengths panel the other day on art and technology, there was a really compelling conversation about an example of that exploitation that happens. I also want to direct your attention to a panel. It's tomorrow at noon. It's called Responsible Innovation, Digital Trust in the Performing Arts. And we are certainly not here to sweep any of these questions under the rug. We're going to engage with them. But that's the panel where the conversation is going to really focus on some of the legal and ethical issues around the technology itself. Today, we want to explore some of the collaborative possibilities and pitfalls of these technologies that are inescapably a part of our world, while at the same time asking the critical questions about the role of technological collaboration in creative practice, which of course necessarily includes interrogation, questions, and critique. Before we get started, I just want to take 1 minute to thank the amazing production team that is there in the back and our volunteers. Thank you all. We literally can't do this without them. And I also just want to take a minute to thank the APAP staff, including Robbie, who's hiding there in the corner. As a co-chair, I get to really see firsthand how tireless they are in putting these events together. So much thought, so many hours. So if you certainly see somebody with that staff ribbon, tell them thank you for the amazing amount of work. They're very sleep deprived. They might not hear you, but they really appreciate getting to hear the support and that validation that we are all here solely because of their work. So. With that, I'm going to very quickly ask everyone just to introduce yourself and sort of who you are and where you come from. And then each of our panelists have a little bit of a presentation that they're going to talk about their work. We're going to have a conversation. I'll ask them questions. They will ask each other questions. And then hopefully if we have some time, certainly happy to open it up to the audience and thinking about the framings of the conversation that we're going to have here. But really quickly, if all three of you could just sort of introduce, say who you are, where you come from.
Hi, I'm Matthew Niederhauser. I'm from Kearneysville, West Virginia. I am the managing director of Onassis Onyx here in New York. I'm also an artist who uses AI within his creative practice. And I also teach a lot of immersive storytelling classes at NYU in their ITP and IDM programs.
Hi, I'm Annie Dorsen. I'm an artist who's been working with machine-generated language and performance since about 2008. I am also a lawyer with a specialty in tech law and public policy, and I'm the guest curator for art and technology at BAM.
Hi. 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 I'm Brian Magerko. I'm a Regents professor at Georgia Tech down in Atlanta. I'm the current graduate director of graduate studies there for the digital media graduate program, which is a master's and PhD program looking at expressive meaning making through digital media research and design. I run the Expressive Machinery Lab, where for the past about 20 years we've been looking at sort of the formal understanding of human creativity and how that can help us inform building technologies that augment the human creative experience.
All right, so Matthew, you're going to kick us off.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am, here we go. Oh, go back. I'm just going to quickly introduce Onassis Onyx, where I'm the managing director, sort of how we operate, and then talk about a few projects that have specifically used AI either sort of through their development process or is actually integrated into the performance or installation itself. So Onassis Onyx is the Onassis Foundation's global platform for art and advanced technologies. Fundamentally, we have studios in both New York and Athens give artists access to advanced technologies for free. We have an amazing community who works through these studios in a very broad range of creative practices, including performance, of course. We sort of have a ton of different activities. Aside from like the studio access, we provide seed grants, workshops. We have a really amazing advisory council, access to staff for creative, production, technical matters. And we also gussy up the studio now and then to have formal public-facing presentations, including our current participation in Under the Radar right now. And we're also really trying to think of ourselves as a platform. How can we also sustainably distribute these works that incorporate advanced technology, which we think are starting to enter the orbit of performing arts institutions in terms of their ability to display and present them. We often find going into a black box is easier than the white walls of a museum when it comes to a lot of these works. So we're very interested in this sort of new ways of activating performing arts institutions. We have a brand new studio in Tribeca that you are all invited to. We just opened it up to the public for the first time yesterday. I've slept a little bit. We have even some installation photographs from 2 days ago of the new space. It includes a projection room, a sound volume, and then the top right corner is a photo of Graham Sack. We actually have this LED volume that's part of an Under the Radar performance right now. We have an amazing cohort of artists who work out of that space. And we also have a number of core partnerships. We often try to support other institutions who are technology curious. So more specifically with the Lincoln Center, they have the Collider Fellowship, a really amazing art and performance fellowship. And they provide financial support, access to the Lincoln Center staff. We love them, but they don't have a studio where these artists can create and access the technology to make these works. So this is where we're finding we're having a ton of impact, where we'll work with the Lincoln Center and invite artists within their community to access the production resources in our space. We also do the same with the New Ink community from the New Museum, Pioneer Works, NYU has, there's a really interesting creative technology community here in New York, and are very close with Under the Radar. More cool people we play with. We also have our Onassis Air. These, the strong Athens connection, of course. They have a really amazing international residency. If you're an artist, look at Onassis Air. They have a great performing arts track, and working out of Athens is great. And in Athens, they just opened a new space called Onassis Ready, which is going to be the home for Onassis Onyx. And they also have Onassis Stegi, which is their traditional performing arts program, and they commission amazing performing arts and dance pieces, and have a very robust touring program. So I'm just going to talk about a few works that have integrated AI. We have, in Under the Radar this year, we have no need of other worlds. We need mirrors. The performance itself doesn't have an interactive AI element, but the artist, Graham Sack, was able to use generative tools to create the assets that then would be automatically visualized within the volume. I love Graham. I've worked with him before. He does know how to turn on a computer, but he has suddenly been able to create a lot and further engage within the development process and shape his own digital assets in a way that had him much more meaningfully embedded within the production process, and was absolutely vital in order to get this entire project together in the past month. There's just tons of examples, of course, of artists being able to iterate and also create production-ready assets that then sort of filter into some of these pieces. This one's really a wild one. This is Hearken by Flaco Jimenez. He's a really interesting artist, performer, playwright. His piece, Hearken, is looking at sort of the history of an early Creole explorer in sort of the Hudson River, and he actually takes people in and takes in their input through voice and image, the audience beforehand, that then gets regenerated live within the context of the performance. I haven't seen him do it in a year, but he's going to be performing this next week at Onassis Onyx, and actually Graham's piece is still up this weekend. But he is someone who's trying to look at the interactive potentials of AI within a live context, or how do you even integrate the input of audiences beforehand in a manner that is also, quite frankly, critiquing the biases that sort of exist within a lot of these systems in the first place. So it's somebody who is engaging with the technology in a very critical manner, but also sort of leveraging what are, quite frankly, these new potentials for interactivity and reactivity within a performance context. We've been also working closely with Xin Ying, an amazing dancer with the Martha Graham Company, who has been creating interactive AI works that sort of watch your body and teach you Martha Graham dance movements within an installation context, and sort of transforms live visuals, using open source generative image technology. I'm also, let's see here, going to quickly point out a project that I personally made with Mark DaCosta that was shown at BAM last year. This was an interesting sort of integration into Next Wave, where we did 3 large-scale installations at the Black Box Theater, which I'm already forgetting the name of. The Fisher. Sorry, I'm all wound up. At the Fisher. And this piece actually sort of generates, it's like a myth-making machine, and audience members can go up and direct the story through these iPad inputs, and it's just constantly generating the image, voiceover, and reacts to audience input, and is a fun interactive piece. And then the last one I'll mention is Human in the Loop by Sarah Rothberg, who created this really interesting piece where, once again, took audience input leading up to it, and then the script was generated live throughout the piece, and the actual actors were reading the script off of each other through these screen devices on them. It was highly experimental, but also was, I think, a very poignant use of the technology in terms of us parroting the language, predetermining scripts, or, it's, once again, using the technology in a way that potentially allows an audience to think more deeply about how it functions and how it is also being integrated into our lives. Thank you very much. And that was a lot of information really quickly. I'm going to pass the torch.
Okay. Hi. I am going to say some very different kinds of things. So I've been pretty outspoken over the last few years about urging artists and arts institutions to just avoid using generative AI altogether. And that's a little weird for anyone who knows my work over the last 15 years. I've started working with machine-generated language back in 2008. So going back in time to 2008, we were in what's known as an AI winter, when the notion of thinking machines was not very popular. It was a little bit of a computer science backwater, in fact. And I met these chatbot kind of hobbyists who gathered on the internet, and they just made chatbots for fun. The technology had not advanced very much in some time. And the chatbots that I created for my piece, Hello, Hi There, which premiered in 2010, were those kinds of old-fashioned sort of silly toys. In fact, at one of the performances I gave in Seattle of one of my early pieces, there were technologists in the audience who were furious because they were like, the technology's so much better now. I said, I know. So I'm going to play a very short, this is I hope not long, little clip of Hello, Hi There. This is from 2010. It looked so good in rehearsal. It was perfect. Okay. But maybe I'll just talk while this is, okay.
Imagine a game. A man and a woman are having a talk. There is a third person reading their dialogue in a separate room. The object of the game is for the reader to determine which is the man and which is the woman. He knows them by labels A and B, and at the end of the game he says either A is a man and B is a woman, or A is a woman and B is a man. What will happen when a machine takes the part of the man in this game? Will the reader get it wrong as often when the game is played like this as he does when the game is played between two people? This question replaces the old, can machines think?
I love games.
You're going to lose.
Thanks a lot for telling me I am going to lose.
You're very welcome.
I think we better define our terms.
By we do you mean you and me?
Yes, I mean us.
Oh, thanks for explaining that. Does us mean the US or us?
Oh, I think it depends on the context.
Great.
For this. So just to sort of be clear, the piece would sort of run like this for 40 minutes. The program runs off a database of about 3,500 statements that I collected and made a very elaborate decision tree off of. The algorithms would then select a response to an input based on certain hard-coded rules. So it wasn't machine learning. The chatbots are not connected to any centralized database. They're not based on billions of lines of appropriated text, and they don't require very much compute, cooling, energy use. They're very lightweight programs. So at that time, I thought chatbots were interesting for performance because in a way they are performance, right? They're about creating the illusion of thinking in a machine, about tricking the viewer into imagining that there is a mind behind the generated language. I thought the dramatic power of the projects were about the tension between the code, sort of the understructure, and the surface content that's chosen by the algorithm on a specific evening. So you're thinking about the interplay between rules and results. And as an audience member, you can see that relationship over time in the performance. So that's what I meant to convey when I coined the term algorithmic theater. So it may be a little weird that I'm like a professional AI hater now, since large language models and image generators are so much more sophisticated, why not use them? So the first thing is basically what I just said. For the purpose of exposing the tension between rules and results, they're basically useless. The audience looking at generative AI outputs has basically no access to the tension because the understructure, the code, it's like way too complex or hidden to be meaningfully juxtaposed with any generated content. More importantly, and this is what I really want to talk about, is the status of those tools has really changed. And that's obvious, I think, since the launch of ChatGPT in 2022. There's been this explosion of hype and interest in these things. When so-called AI applications were little tiny programs that people dabbled with kind of just for fun or research, they had a certain meaning in the world. But now that the tech giants are pushing them into every aspect of our social and political lives, from primary schools to the military, these tools mean something else entirely. So we've all been going through this period since at least 2020 of thinking about the ethics of what we do. We've been grappling with cultural representation, we've been grappling with labor conditions, with environmental impact, how we work, what we make. We've been seeking to introduce some durable structures of equity into the production, distribution, and consumption of the arts. But there's been very little conversation, really, about the political implications of new technologies. And I think that's an overdue conversation. So I'm just going to lay out a couple of things that I've been thinking about over the last 3 years. First of all, I don't take it as a given that using the tools to examine them or critique them is a good approach. I did it. I made a piece called Prometheus Firebringer, which used commercial AI products as a way of critiquing it, and I don't honestly feel great about having done it. First of all, virtually all compute for generative AI runs through big foundation models that are created by the big tech companies. That's generally Microsoft or Amazon. So even if you don't realize you're using those companies' products, you probably are. And those AI companies are aiming to become a kind of new middleman standing between each of us and like everything we do on the internet. Every edit and search and spell check and comment and interaction. And these tolls that they're going to be charging us for doing anything on the internet are really enriching like some of the worst companies and some of the worst people in the world. And that's true even when you're using their tools to critique them. Second, our colleagues in film and television, in graphic design, in concept art, illustration, voiceover work, on and on, a lot of the work that makes the performing arts possible, are fighting for survival right now against AI models that are stealing their work, their expertise and their skill, as well as their commissions and their job security. So those of us who work in live performance can often feel like we are exempt from these issues because of what we do. But this is not true. Generative AI is coming for us too. And even while theater and dance and other live art forms will survive, the aesthetic and epistemological environments in which we work are getting hollowed out and changed in some cases beyond recognition. Third, the energy use of these systems is wildly, massively out of proportion to what they can do. And it threatens what little progress we've made on reducing carbon emissions over the past 20 years. The big tech companies have blown right through their emissions reductions goals. Sometimes they've taken those goals off their websites. And that's almost entirely due to the compute and cooling needed to run AI models. We were on track, even before Trump and all the rest of it. We were on track. Energy industry players were planning and expecting to transition off of gas and coal-powered energy. And now, new gas-fired plants are being built at a very shocking rate. And that's entirely because of AI. And it's just worth noting that once a plant is built, it stays online for 30 or 40 years. So one of my big questions has been, what social benefit or artistic interest could possibly be worth that? Like, how good would the art have to be? If that's not persuasive, there are similar damaging consequences from using generative AI in virtually every social domain, from labor to healthcare, education, policing and criminal justice, privacy and surveillance. It just goes on and on. I want to say one quick thing about the surveillance capacities. Last year, Larry Ellison, the CEO of Oracle, gave a press conference or something, and he predicted a future of constant real-time machine learning-powered monitoring. He proposed this as a good thing. He said, citizens will be on their best behavior because we are constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on. I mean, it's super dystopian stuff. And Ellison used the example of the police being tracked, right? When he says, we're gonna, make the police more accountable by tracking everything they're doing. But I mean, who are we kidding? I think we all know who will really be the targets of these systems. So if you care about criminal justice, if you care about racial equality, if you care about the rights of protesters, the rights of immigrants, of people seeking abortions in 22 states, the rights of trans people, any civil rights issue you can think of, AI is in fact a danger to you and the people you care about. So it might be kind of tempting or easy to think that the artwork we make with or about AI is not implicated in those harms. But I think that's not entirely true, because artists always do something collectively that almost none of us will ever do individually. We create the culture. And right now, artists are in danger of becoming inadvertent propagandists for big tech. Some of us already are. We make the technologies seem interesting, cool, full of potential, maybe even beautiful. We're creating eye-dazzling immersive experiences. We're creating funny ChatGPT cabarets. We're creating spooky, weird images from this weird land called latent space. But we could instead do to generative AI what we kind of did to NFTs, and that is to make it like really, really super uncool to use them. At a minimum, before using AI models, I think we should be asking, and not just asking, but answering the questions, who do these technologies profit? Whose culture do they really advance? And at whose expense? Thanks.
Can I use yours? Oop, okay, sure.
I'll take your mic.
All right. That's your microphone now, Aaron. All right. Wow, that was a lot to chew on, right? I just want to say the work that I'm going to present here is really in agreement with a lot of the mentality that was reflected in your talk. My name is Brian Magerko. I've been working on human and AI creativity since 1998 at Carnegie Mellon. I did the improv robot comedy troupe, which was these two robots that improvised a little scene together. It was very amusing. As a senior thesis project with a number of other researchers, and thought that, wow, this is pretty slick. I really want to do some more of this. So I've really dedicated my career to both understanding how we are creative cognitively. What does it mean for us to be creative? How do we evaluate things and when we call them creative? How are we creative together, collaboratively? Especially in improvisation, which is sort of what I don't know if you noticed the lack of paper here, but is sort of like a thing that I'm pretty into and have been kind of my whole life as a speaker, as a musician, and as a researcher, is how do we spontaneously create with each other? And if we can understand that well enough, maybe we can build technologies that augment that experience. So instead of really worrying about building experiences or technologies that replace people, I'm very much interested in opening the doors to what's possible in terms of what people can do as creators and as performers, and what it is that we in an audience can see. So I'm going to share with you a couple projects that are examples of one very long-term work, one very short-term work, on how we've tried to create AI in collaboration, in the first instance, with artists to create something that those artists had never experienced on stage before, and wound up creating something just new as a result. Just like with television or film or virtual reality, AI can be a medium for new experience. And so the first project I'm going to share is a couple-minute video. Hopefully you can hear it over Neil Diamond or whatever the hell's going on out there. Here we go.
In 2012 at Georgia Tech, a fusion of technology and art unfolds. In the innovative landscape of Brian Magerko's expressive AI Studio graduate course, the seeds are sown for what would become a technological marvel. Innovative minds in computer science and digital media introduced the first prototype of the world's first improvisational movement AI, which blends human artistry and embodiment with artificial intelligence. This digital performer captivates and interacts with audiences at museums, festivals, and conferences around the world, heralding a new era where technology and human creativity dance in unison. The software is rebranded as Lumini, as the team incorporates other elements of dance theory into its cognition. In 2021, the National Science Foundation recognizes the potential of Lumini and funds the project, bringing Kennesaw State University Dance and collaborator Andrea Knowlton to the team. The goal is to delve deep into the creative process of improvisational movement, using these insights to further inform how AI can creatively interact with humans. Research is conducted to understand the creative sense-making process of dance partners. Through extensive sessions and analysis of KSU dance students, the team seeks to decode the subtleties of human co-creativity. Insights culminate in the interconnected model of improvisational dance inputs framework, illustrating how movements are influenced by in-the-moment influences such as personal experiences, partners, environments, generative strategies, and heuristics, which guide creative expression. A major discovery is the need for a structured language beyond what current dance theory provides to describe body movements in improvisational dance. To bridge this gap, researchers developed their own body action taxonomy, creating a lexicon for AI to learn and reason about human movement. The observable creative sense-making framework is introduced. It quantifies interaction dynamics through parameters such as participation and newness, allowing researchers to capture the essence of collaborative creation. The user experience is further refined through an exploratory user study, which reveals insights for updating the agent's design, visual interface, and specificities. Through collaborative creativity and iterative design, this ongoing project is transforming into more than just a tool. It's becoming a partner in dance. Lumini challenges the limits of what can be achieved in the seamless integration of human creativity and artificial intelligence.
So I thought I had a clip from it at the end of that, but the kicker to that is that this collaboration with the School of Dance at Kennesaw State University culminated in the world's first human AI improvised dance performance in May 2024. If you can go find the video online on the YouTube, but it's very much an interesting experience in having dancers dance collaboratively with that ebb and flow of introducing and exploring ideas on stage with an AI that is projected sort of on a holographic hologauze on the front of the stage. And because it's not a person, we're able to blow up the AI to be 20 feet tall or to have 30 of them on the stage dancing with people all in unison. And it provided dancers an experience that pushed them in different creative directions than they would have just by dancing with themselves. So even though they sort of rejected the technology at first, I don't know why they signed up for an AI and dance class, but they very quickly come to kind of realize that, oh wait, this is something that's a little uncomfortable in a good way, and this is a thing that can help me reflect on my body and what I'm doing, just like dancing in front of a mirror, or dancing with a partner, or kind of something in between. You know? The next work I want to show is a more recent project. This was an install done across 4 months at the Goat Farm Arts and Music Center in Atlanta, Georgia. It is an example of ambient AI called sound clouds. And this is as sort of focused on AI movement as that last one is. This is all focused on human movement and play and expression. So there is an enormous building that we had access to where we have 10 to 12 foot large inflatable called clouds that are kind of filled with helium, mixture of helium and air. And they're very easy to manipulate and float and bounce across this warehouse space. And as you're doing so, they're actually an input into sound generation. So this collaborative play with people, which is very naturalistic, like the 2-year-olds on up know what to do with this, you know? It very quickly turns into this social, adult, it's okay to play, but also it's calm and very oddly therapeutic and kind of awesome experience. So this is something that we're actually pushing on quite a bit in terms of engaging people in public spaces with computer vision and generated music, but with a very material and social playful component that is not like our day-to-day experience, or maybe anything we've ever had experienced before. So that's it, thank you. And please feel free to add me on things, or check out videos of ours on our YouTube page. Cheers.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Does it work?
We got a new mic, yeah, for you. So everybody should be...
Testing, yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Excellent. All right. This is fantastic. I love all the perspectives that we have here. So we're going to have a little conversation. Feel free to ask each other questions as well. Do my job for me, please. I want to start, though, in my view, sort of like one of the core themes/questions we have here is this, you know, what do we mean by creativity in the AI context and the interface of creativity and newness, which I think sort of gets to your question of like, is the art worth it that comes out of this in a certain way?
That was rhetorical.
Exactly. Well, you know, this is a very philosophical conversation, but I want to just sort of drill down a little bit, you know, from each of y'all's lens. You know, can you give a little bit of a defining quality of what creativity in AI, you know, means or doesn't mean when you think about it in these different creative practices?
You know, I could talk about this for quite a while, so I'm letting.
Well, maybe I'll start with
Yeah,
actually
please, yeah.
listening to you, and I wonder whether you've looked into the work of Margaret Bowden at all. Yeah. So this is when people ask me what I think creativity is about. I often think of a researcher named Margaret Bowden who thought a lot about human and computer creativity. And one of the things that she distinguishes in her writing, you know, she distinguishes between kind of the creativity that's new, like the new idea that a person has for the first time and how thrilling that is, right? But that's not like a world historical creative event, right? Like a kid who discovers something for the first time. Then there's this kind of creativity that is like a new idea has been loosed upon the world, right? And that's something else. She also talks about, you know, combinatorial creativity, sort of like what happens when you just have different elements and you combine them in completely novel ways, right? So she's trying to break down different forms of, you know, I don't know, imaginative work, new ideas, creative impulses, to recognize that they're not all of the same register. And I think that's helpful to think about.
Yeah, the way Margaret Bowden talks about the different kinds of creativities. One of them is, I like, it's very easy for me to think about this with music in particular. So one's exploratory. So exploratory creativity is, rock and roll from the 50s until it died, whenever you decide that was, right? But definitely there's not any new rock and roll that's coming out that sounds anything new, right? It's all about it. Blues music is another example. I would argue jazz. There's sort of a well-defined space that we're all playing in more or less. And we're using riffs and we're using motifs that are familiar. There's combinational creativity, like, in the 80s when Anthrax, recorded with, was it Run DMC or something? No, Public Enemy. Public Enemy. But it's that mishmashing of we're in such a postmodern kind of culture. That's all we do now, right? Is just mushing things together. And that's kind of that's what the AI, these are the things that AI are kind of good at. They're good at treading over ideas that already exist exhaustively. But as was just brought up, transformational creativity, that's the seeing the landscape and doing something different than the landscape. It's, Andy Warhol saying, hey, this soup can be a piece of art, or somebody saying, this urinal really is a piece of art. It really is something that is genre changing. There are new motifs or a new language that are being invoked. So that AI is, that's a hard thing for people to do. That's on average. So, yeah. But
why do you ask that question?
Because I'm the facilitator of this panel.
No. I feel like there's something behind it that you're getting at.
Oh, I had an answer. I wanted to follow up on your question, though, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I can't remember if I talked to you guys about this, but one of the problems that I have with people talking about AI and creativity is that it's such a broad word, creative. I created something. I made this with AI. What the hell does that mean, right? People have been using AI in film for decades. If you've seen, AI was used in The Lion King, the original Lion King. There's a flocking algorithm that's used for the wildebeest scene. AI has been used a long time. So, what does it mean for us to use it in different creative contexts? Really means us to have a different kind of vocabulary than just saying made or created. So I use this to ideate. I use this to come up with ideas. That is a distinct sub-process of what we talk about when we're saying creativity, right? Or I use this to help me pick ideas. People will probably look down on that more, honestly. But using those words that are kind of creative, sub-creative words, I think it would be a useful thing for us to figure out how to do more around these technologies.
Yeah. Matthew.
You sort of know it when you see it. But I feel that there's, especially people within our orbit, and a lot of the projects I presented were more in the performing arts context, but there are some people who are really digging deep into a systems level, where there are actually people like Stephanie Dinkins, who's in our cohort, who are actually fundamentally looking at how models are built, data is collected, instead of working on top of potentially, illicitly sourced data set in the first place. People who are interrogating a hardware and software level, which I think are fascinating, maybe not ready for consumption by a large audience, but is super powerful, and I think can also be effective in terms of the pointing a mirror back at the people who are creating it. I see much more broadly, and which is disappointing to see, the replacement of what we consider more traditional media creation, whether sound, photo, imagery. I personally worked as a photojournalist for 8 years. I got paid very poorly by the New York Times for very aggressive IP and ownership of my imagery. $200 article I got paid for, they're now trying to sell for $40,000 an article to ChatGPT. So it's not just them, the media companies that we liked, I still read, you still get $50 a month, New York Times, or whatever the hell you're charging me. But, you know, there are exploitive IP and licensing models out there that exist even outside of the AI realm. I just went off on a tangent. But I'm not as impressed right now with like the mimicking or the building of imagery or straight video, and you're seeing that like with ChatGPT, like their Sora app, where it's like, you know, we're going to mass produce TikTok videos or something like that, and so that's coming, you know, and I definitely, you know, I agree a lot with what Annie is saying. Like seeing that on a mass scale feels very unsustainable in many ways. The flip side of the coin, whether it's worth it or not, I've seen some artists who would in no way be able to afford a video production. I mean, this is the democratization argument, which I know I definitely we heard it and why, and I get it, and I think it rings hollow sometimes, but I do know people who are creating film. Is it worth it or not? I mean, I'm more often than not on the fence about that. And I'll say just one more thing and can pass it off to you. So, I mean, there's people who are using systems and hardware who are just like, I find very fascinating, which is actually getting under the hood with the technology. You see the mimicry of traditional media making practices for creating film, where we're seeing a lot of the replacement within creative industries. And then the third one is where I find it very interesting and is, you know, as I said, like I probably agree with your foundation of almost everything you're saying, but for me, I'm still like engage, you know what I mean? But people who are going, which I feel is a new language, which is sort of this interactive potential, which, you know, I feel is moving beyond just chatbots at this point, but where you're having very personal, customized stories reactive to you, where it's you're sort of doing essentially like architecting a world building process that an audience then interacts with. That feels like a new language. Should we be even doing it? Is very much, you know, I still think an important debate to have, of course. But if we're going to talk about how people are using it creatively, like I do find that very interesting in terms of like a live feedback, you know, with AI systems.
I mean, to be fair, you can do interactive narrative without generative AI. It's been around for, I mean, Tailspin, which was an AI-generated story system, came out in the 1970s, maybe. So there's been a decent amount of, I mean, they were all terrible, to be fair. And this is the thing, is that like, this is the question, is the quality worth it, right? Because all the systems sort of pre-deep learning, I mean, I was in the interactive narrative community for a long time, and we all just showed our barely working systems to each other, and was like, well, this told Little Red Riding Hood okay, you know, but is it worth it is a really deep question to ask. Like, is it worth having that richness of a button that we can push to get a lot more continuity, a lot more variability, a lot more whatever it is that we're looking for, because we don't want to do it ourselves and we're pushing a button?
Yeah, I want to jump in just for a really important clarification, that when we talk about AI, it's very unclear what we mean. The term AI is super contested. Its application to various different technologies is super contested. You know, when we talk about machine learning or deep learning, there can be many, many technologies that we're describing with that. And when we talk about generative AI, we are also talking about a sort of bundle of things. So generative AI is what I have been talking about. That's the stuff that is making things, right? Like you give some kind of a prompt, and you're gonna, the algorithm itself is gonna generate some information. There's all kinds of sort of AI technologies that are not generative AI, and they can have certain uses in various fields. You know, you've probably been hearing about the protein finding algorithms, and you know, some of the applications in medicine and whatever, like that or data analysis is a sort of a different thing than generative.
I mean, speech recognition is a really good
Yeah,
is a
and
good
so
example.
so you're totally right. Of course, there's been AI since the term was coined in 1940 at Dartmouth, right? 46, right? In Dartmouth.
56.
Oh, okay. 48. Can I offer you 48?
I really think it was in the 50s.
Well, we can Google.
Let me ask
telling you.
ChatGPT right now.
I will be. We wouldn't get the right answer. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure to say that we're using it in a loose way, and that's a whole thing.
Nomenclature is very important, though, as you're pointing out, for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
No. I mean, you stole one of my questions, which was like I think there was a way in which like AI kind of becomes this catch-all bugbear of something else. And you asked like, why did I ask the question about creativity? I mean, my actual answer is I'm seeing there's something uncanny. A word used too much, but there's a certain like fear of the way in which these technologies are interfering with the sort of live performance experience that we all at this conference are here to embrace and love and support the artists. And you use the frame about hollowing out some of the artistic experiences. And so I guess that's, to me, it's sort of what exactly is it about the AI that we feel is almost hijacking the creativity?
So it's, I mean, quite simply, it's another form of mediation, right? So if we're thinking about human connection, then everything that we place between each other is a mediation. And AI is a special kind of mediation. Generative AI is a special kind of mediation because it seems to be speaking for itself, as opposed to simply transmitting what one person is communicating to another. And that can be fun to play with, right? Because there's an element of stochasticness to it that's kind of interesting to play with. There's an element of the unexpectedness where you can almost feel as though you're engaging with some other mind, which you are not. So artists, I don't know, since at least Cage, but going back probably to Tristan Tzara in the early 20th century, have played with chance as a way of engaging with like something out of their control and having to experience an artwork that wasn't just made by them with full intentionality, right? And that can be a super exciting experience for an artist and also for an audience. Generative AI is something different, I think, because it is, the stochastic element of it is like so hidden behind all of this plausibility. It's so seamless. You can't crack it open to really, and I think I love the work of Stephanie Dinkins, for example, and some of the other artists that you guys are working with who is really trying to like break open the data sets, get into the guts of things. So anyway, I think it's a complicated question, like, and then I think, you can't help but let your mind sort of like hop, skip over to the social context where we have like literally teenagers killing themselves because they are in this interactive experience. They're in a kind of interactive, and I just wrote a big piece about this, like chatbot conversations are a kind of playwriting, but they're a kind of playwriting that people don't recognize as such, and so that makes it very dangerous because the human does not know that they're in a collaboration writing a fiction. And that information is purposely obscured by the tech companies that want to push these things as therapists and whatever else. So anyway, la-di-da-di, the point is that, that form of mediation, I think, is a kind of grotesque mimicry of the connection that we hope to find in live performance. It's never going to meet that need, but it will sure give a good impression of it.
I weirdly do a lot of work in AI literacy with the kinds of installations that I do. And one of the things, if I could, snap my fingers and change things, would be to just add at the beginning of every output of these generative systems and just say, the average person on the internet would say. Because that is literally what these algorithms, that is exactly what they are. At their core is, given the words that you said, what are the most likely words from the internet, on average? And depending on how randomness works, you can sort of get kind of different answers if you run it multiple times, but it's still going to be sort of like what an average person would say. So that really cuts the credibility to like oh kind of level, right? Because like the average person on the internet, would you trust? So, but I got an email from OpenAI a month ago, and it said, the new version of ChatGPT, maybe some of you have seen this, and it said, you can ask it any question. And it said, no, really, any question. And you can technically, but you really shouldn't listen to any of the answers, right? So a lot of this is how it's being contextualized for us as consumers, rather than what the actual affordances and sort of risks and boundaries of these technologies are. They're averaginators.
I think it actually gives me really great legal advice sometimes.
Sorry?
In all honesty, especially for some of my, I get it, but I don't want to suddenly be like a champion of the technology just by saying it, but it does carry, I have 80 artists who use it for sometimes like IP contracts, and it finds things that are exploited for them. But I wouldn't call that like an average internet answer at the same time.
As your lawyer, I do not advise this.
I am not giving any legal advice here. But I'm just pushing back a little bit that it is like the weights of the system, do push it toward. We have an eager audience member who wants to jump in as well. But yeah.
Can I just weigh in 2 minutes? I've spent the last 10 years.
Yeah, we have a microphone right over there. Thank you.
We have a lot of mics that work very well.
Let's get the floor. Oh, someone will probably come.
It's there it is. Yeah. So I'm a late career morpher who's an individual artist now, but has spent 35 years in enterprise tech, the last 10 in AI, the last 7 specifically with companies that source the training resources hired by frontier model builders to train AI. And I can tell you, it doesn't tell you what the average person on the internet would answer. It tells you what the consensus of Japanese-speaking bioscientists, how they would answer that question in native Japanese. It's very specialized, and the people that are hired to do this are hired through vendors, and they're literally teams of 20 to 40-year-olds in Silicon Valley that decide which vendors to use, which resources from those vendors to use, how to create the guidelines for training. And there is quite a lot of, I'm trying to get out of that industry because I got more and more morally conflicted about it. But there's a lot of subjectivity in the training process, and creating multimedia content. We were hiring voice actors to, read this as if you were subtly irritated. Well, what does subtle irritation sound like to even people within an American culture, never mind across cultures? And there's some 25-year-old in Silicon Valley kind of deciding, well, that sounds more like subtle irritation to me. I'm right out of the industry, and I have lots of thoughts on all these topics, and a blog that we should talk about called DI Dharma, which is digital intelligence for example. But it's at the end of the day, there are human beings that are which output 2 versions of the model, one tuned this way, one tuned that way. Same question goes into both. 2 versions of the output. You've got 6 dimensions you're supposed to evaluate it on. Which one do you like better and why? And you're asking 10 people that 500 times 3 within 72 hours to do a next iteration of the training on the Foundation model.
So I want to pull us back a little bit too.
I just want to clarify something. When I was saying they're averaginators, I'm talking about like original LLM, like BERT, ChatGPT models without all of the extra work that's being done on top of it. So yeah, when you interact with ChatGPT and it's like, hello, I'm very polite, I'm whatever, that's not what the original model does. That is what they have tweaked and trained and put other models on top of and what have you. So yeah, you're absolutely correct that there's far more tweaking and fine tuning involved than the averageinator.
So I'm gonna pull us back into the conversation real quick because around art and creativity. There's lots of conversations to have here, and this is actually why, again, reminder, we have another session tomorrow at noon as well. Thinking about, we have a lot of APAP, a lot of presenters here. I'm at institution. I'm curious, just a few thoughts from y'all on what are sort of the obligations of arts presenters or of institutions when it comes to thinking like this? Andy, you pointed out, like, we're interacting with AI in our day-to-day, as from our mass emails to everything else. But I'm just curious sort of thoughts on if you were to give sort of tips or best practices in both a positive and in a cautionary way for institutions. Like, what are some of the things y'all would like to see or wish you would see more from the institutional side of things?
For one, I would say, like, if it's not evident, it's worth talking about the ethical issues just to see if that you're on the same page. If you are fine with things being stolen off of the internet and we're going to use this because this is your bottom line and you're going to get fired otherwise, well, just be honest about it. But at the very least, having those conversations and being sort of honest about what the ethical values are that your organization is trying to represent, or you as an individual, I think it's kind of important to actually think about it and make an explicit decision.
So I have two super quick hits on that. The first is when it comes to programming art, I think, anyone who's running an arts institution has expertise, has experience, has an aesthetic, has a point of view. Continue to use your expertise. If you see a piece that you absolutely love and it uses some advanced technology, go for it. But there is literally no reason for any institution to be like, we got to get on this and we've got to like start some new technology, art tech, thingamajiggy, because, forget it. Like, just program the stuff you like. And some of it might use advanced technologies and some of it might not. Maybe it's using a pencil, and that is an advanced technology as well. Second, sorry to do this at APAP, but tomorrow, I've been doing this kind of review for BAM on sort of the use of AI in not-for-profit arts institution administration. And I'm going to be kind of presenting a quick version of that at ISPA tomorrow. No, not tomorrow. One of the days. A day that ends in Y. And I don't know when it is, but if you're going to ISPA too, check it out. Or if you would like me to send you the slides, send an email to me, and actually Aoife could make that happen if you're interested. It's just got some like stuff to think about as an arts institution that might be thinking about AI implementation.
You are speaking on Wednesday at 4:15.
Thank you very much.
That's what I'm here for.
I mean, I would agree with that notion. I think it's like, I do hope that programmers take time to actually look at a lot of the things. It's amazing that we just went off into like a large training argument for a little bit. I mean, but honestly, like, I've been an advocate for this type of technological understanding since the internet started. A lot of people still don't know how the internet works. And I'm not saying you got to know what a switch or a packet or a subnet or an internet or even a mobile device. And I think it's interesting that, I mean, I don't want to age myself. I'm an elder millennial. I grew up with the internet. I'm Xennial. It's all good. I'm a cusp. I have a niece now and have started fully realizing what happens when the internet. It's something I've known about, but seeing when an iPad is handed to you fully formed with an app, and you never had to program a dial-up modem. You never went through the steps. You know what I mean? And what sort of it's like the slow take on of the internet over a decade or two, I think for a generation, like actually sort of, you have you understood what the other side is. What's pretty wild about AI is that it just got turned on real fast. And yes, it's been happening for a while. I've coded my first neural network in 1998 using Lisp to analyze, like oxygen, like the oxygenation of water on a simple neural network. You know what I mean? So I'm not your normal user, of course, but where was I going with this? If you're a presenter, you do take the time the more you know about the technology, the more you're going to understand like what makes a creative use of it, rather than just something that has just been spun out in front of you. Definitely indemnify yourself. Make sure that they take on all the risk. I don't know. I mean, like, I'm very lucky because I run a space that gets people access to the tech for experimentation, and you know, we do try to engage with technology companies, maybe with the futile hope that we might influence them or not as well. But I do think that people within these entities, I mean, you know, they do pay attention to us. Maybe they are just throwing us a bone, if you will, like being like, oh, that's nice, but then we're still going to suck out all of your data and create a surveillance state. Yeah, I don't know. I got really way off track on that. But what she said, don't change your programming, but think deeply about it, engage the ethical issues, and you know, I think this is an important time for inquiry and you know, experimentation.
Let me add on to that last point. There is a lot of opportunity in this new medium for new experiences, for us to have things coming out of our insides to the outside world in a deeper and richer and different way than we have been able to do before as humans. So that in and of itself is really powerful and important to push on. How to ride that line is admittedly very difficult in terms of experimenting and creating new experiences, and also going, well, I didn't touch any dirty software today, or whatever, you know, that you're trying to avoid. So it's a very odd time to be working in this space.
I do want to open up to the floor for questions. We have a microphone here. My one challenge to y'all is, you know, make your a form of a question rather than a comment, even though we come from academia. But the microphone is here if anybody does want to pose a question for us or for the larger room to think about. And I see a hand here. Again, I'm also, I can come down and do my talk show host version of this, but
There's somebody at the microphone as well.
all right, so we'll go here and then we'll do our microphone question.
Hello, I'm at the microphone. Hi, I'm Abby with Animal Cracker Conspiracy. I've had this conversation with myself as an artist my entire life. Where does the line of art versus waste come? I'm using foam, using every material possible. If it has been produced and not reused, it's waste. And so where do you think the line draws between using materials that we're already using that are more tangible versus the gross use of these new technologies? Does that frame?
Yeah, I think the difference, I guess, when we think about the environmental costs of AI is that we already have tools that can do a lot of what AI is doing for us, but the energy use for AI is so much more intense. So using generative AI for information retrieval when you could use Google, 30 times more energy. Using generative AI to create a picture rather than some other method, Photoshop, say. You know, like, we have already sort of technologies that can do a lot. Generative AI does something different, right? I understand that, but there's like what's going on with the building of data centers, what's going on with the building of these, you know, gas-fired plants, what's going on with the energy use is so crazy. And that's why I said it's wildly out of proportion to what they do. It's not that you can do anything in life without using resources. We eat, we breathe, we drink water, right? Like, it's not about not using resources. It's about, like, what's the proportionate resource for the task you're doing. And when it comes to artistic exploration, that's a very big unknown because it's an experiment, right? Like, we're figuring it out. So there is always waste in some ways involved in experimentation because you don't know where things are going to lead and you don't really know what success is anyway. So, you know, so it's from my mind, it's less about an individual use and much more about these systemic issues, which are like, the big AI companies are like terraforming the planet right now for data centers. That's crazy, you know. It's madness. we have like a brewing environmental collapse. And to be doing this scale of damage, to me, seems insane.
For a clear, not for a lack of a clearly proportional benefit to society.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And with some pretty clear downsides. Like we know already what a lot of the downsides are. Yeah.
All right, I'll do our question here, and then we'll jump over here.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks. Hi, my name is Deborah. My comment is so granular compared to what y'all are talking about. Y'all are in Headyville, and I'm down on dogshit reality. I was recently asked, an audition was presented to me, but I was told that in order to audition for the project, I would have to sign off and agree on complete body and voice capture. It gets nastier because this is actually in the new contract that came out of the last strike, that they could create subsequent episodes completely using the body and voice capture, never using me as a physical live actor again.
Yep.
They would have to pay me contract minimum, but then my work is no longer my work because it's the work of the computer generation based on the capture. So what's minimum compared to that's not me acting. And
is there a question?
No.
Okay.
Well, it comes down to the ethics and the moral usage of the technology, which basically X's out the artist and their innate, unduplicatable
Humanness.
creativity
Yeah. But
in
let
the
me-
process and still calling it art.
Let me make this worse for you.
Oh, I was going to do that too.
Yeah, this is what I'm good for. That, now imagine the company that you sign the contract with gets sold. And that data now, they have it in perpetuity. It gets used for who the hell knows what, right? In perpetuity. So, you may sign one of these kind of contracts and, with an understanding that there's certain purpose, right, that they're getting the data for, but that could go totally out the window as soon as, divisions could break up. The company doesn't even have to be sold. It could just be they sell their data. It probably has a third-party contract provision, which means that they are allowed to assign it, they're allowed to lease it, they're allowed to sell just even your data, right? This could turn into such a nightmare in terms of who knows what, your face, your voice, being put to all kinds of uses that it's hard to even imagine. And after you're dead.
And to even to make it worse. So, I mean, you've probably seen, the deep fake Tom Cruise videos a few years ago. People were really excited about that. And I saw that and immediately thought, man, Mission Impossible 300 doesn't sound like a good thing for human culture, right? If Indiana Jones is always played by Harrison Ford forever, not for the next few years, forever. We need to make space for more ideas, more expression, new stories, and I feel like we're hitting pause on human culture with this stuff to some extent.
Matthew, are you seeing artists that y'all work with, or especially younger artists? Is there sufficient mentorship in terms of what they need to be thinking about, or do you have thoughts on sort of how we can sort of structure and prepare this next generation of artists to be thinking about some of these issues?
And it's a very intense dialogue within our community because I think younger artists are more and more interdisciplinary, and people who are coders also interact with people who are actors or illustrationists who, that's a great jam. I think that there's the siloing of these creative fields don't exist as much anymore, and that there is there's a consistent drumbeat of dialogue. I will say, and this is outside of a judgment, I see a lot of people using these tools, and I actually have never seen so much engagement with a single tool from creatives. That does not mean that you should sign that contract, and it is as I said, I brought up my example of the New York Times. I'm looking at a lot of my old legacy, contracts and being like, dang, there's a whole entire new context in which that creative work I did is going to be exploited. The environmental implications are especially at the tops of people's mind. The surveillance side of it is, we already live in a pretty wild state already through social media. I lived in China for 8 years. I don't even want to go on that rant right now in terms of actually a really strong surveillance state that is taking hold for one of the largest populations in the world. But I don't know. Is there going to be resistance to it? Is it going to be a fate? I don't think, unfortunately, it's going to become uncool like an NFT. Man, I don't know. It's like the train has really left the station in many ways, and I'm not saying we're going to pull it back in.
We'll see.
You guys know that the youth have a slur for AI. It's called clankers. I don't know if there's another one maybe, but it's the dumbest name. But like, don't be a clanker, or don't like, and it's somebody who's like using AI and they'll put each other down for it. So there's some backlash. Whether that's the majority, I'm not saying at all.
I think that really does exist. I think that the novelty of a lot of it, and like Lord knows we don't need every single 12-year-old doing 2,000 different iterations of a prank video, because Sora is like, especially generating video right now, is massively energy consuming. But I would say that there's like people, as they've sort of gotten over the initial novelty of it, are very selective in finding how it can support them within their creative practice, or using it as a research tool. Obviously, double checking their work, but it's my judgment or not, it is being used widely, and I hope we end up on the right side of it in some way. But creativity is never going to be the same again, I feel, to a certain extent, or not. I mean, it's going to change through this, or how we value it, or the way that people speak to each other, the way that they write. It's moving in ways that are hard to define, and we're in the midst of it.
All right, we got a couple more questions, I think.
Hi guys, my name is Liav, and loving the debate and the conversation, and I like how you have a panel made up of very different opinions, by the way, appreciating that and the space for that. I was at the 35 and under affinity group last night, and we're all talking about how we're the younger group inheriting what's next. So it also, of course, came up as a part of changing our industry. And I'll also just comment that my Instagram feed is now probably 2 things that seem AI generated or amplified out of the 3. Like, it's just all over the feeds. It's crazy. And that feels like it just changed in like the last 6 months, really. So part of the conversation last night with the 35 and unders was like, hey, coal changed the world, then electricity changed the world, then fast forward, internet changed the world. If this just changes the world, and all of the implications, I don't want to say implications aside, but we move, hopefully navigate through the chaos of it all. Maybe, I'm not even saying this in a hopeful way, but either it destroys the world, or sometimes we find a way to make it more energy efficient, whatever. But I'm hearing a lot of like, we don't know where the future's going, we don't know where the future's going, and a lot of doomsaying. But is there also, and then I'm hearing a little bit from you guys, like, how do we integrate it into our art possibly? But I'm also seeing a lot of people discussing what jobs will disappear. And I think at every one of those moments that coal was created and electricity created and internet created, jobs disappeared and the world changed. But a whole industry disappeared. So I'm wondering if we can have would you guys have some realistic thoughts that like, you know what, these are the things that will disappear. And if you're in that, just keep that in mind and consider diversifying so that we can have do you have any advice on, if this goes this way, here's what you need to start preparing in your role as an artist? I'm hearing a lot of safeguards. I'm hearing a lot of the ethical safeguards. Be careful of this, be careful of that. but I'm also not quite yet hearing. I heard a little bit of like, oh, I've done some integration of art and AI, but like, also, what are the, do you get what I'm saying? That are like, where do we need to go next if this all happens?
Yeah, I think that's well taken. And yeah, I'm curious, any thoughts from our panel?
I mean, number one, go vote. This is maybe the most important issue. This is one of the most important issues of our day. We very much can go towards the Star Trek future, where who is it? It was Elon Musk or somebody with a ton of money said recently, like, we won't have jobs anymore. We won't have the need for jobs anymore. That's great, but if the path there is the consolidation of wealth and resources to a minute part of the population, what are the rest of us doing? How are we subsisting? How are we surviving on a day-to-day basis? So that's more the Blade Runner route, or the Aliens franchise route, and we're very much at a crossroads right here. You brought up like innovations like coal and whatnot. I think the one that hits the home maybe easiest for us as an analogy is social media, right? Like social media hit pretty fast. I mean, once MySpace went away, anyway, and. Has it gone great? Like, was that a good decision on our part, socio-technically? Are we better off with social media in our lives? Maybe. Did we do it right? Absolutely not. Whatever world we're living in, the social media experiment that we're running on humanity isn't going great.
Yeah.
And we're like Matthew just said, our creativity is going to be different in the future. Is that good? Is that bad? I mean, it's just a huge question mark over like what our relationship is with each other, with how we make a living, and how much control these companies are allowed to have over us.
Yeah, I think the question, and Matthew, I keep looking to you because you do work with so many young artists or younger, earlier in their career artists. It seems to me the question is sort of like, what advice would we give for future-proofing for artists, in what we see seems to be coming down the tunnel.
Abandon hope, all ye who enter. No, well, I will say, because I'm somebody who I'm fascinated by technology, I'm fascinated by its creative uses. I would say what has been a really interesting trend, sometimes for better or for worse, especially thinking about the recent explosion in interest in immersion and experiential. 10 years ago, and thank God not, like they thought everybody was going to go home and spend 2 hours on their VR headsets, you know what I mean? And there was a huge investment in that technology, and it finds out people really only want to play it sometimes for some games or some fitness applications. Maybe you'll see an impact piece at a museum or something. But immersion transformed actually. It's like actually people want to spend time together, role-playing or being in a room together or having a social experience. And immersion can just be sound and light and doesn't need to be mediated by a screen. And to have a meaningful engagement requires putting your phone away and having a structured engagement, maybe not in a proscenium type theater context. And I see a lot of that, a shift away often from screens. Well, I guess they are large screens sometimes in an immersive context, but fundamentally that there's like a human interaction that's being sought out. And I find that hopeful. And that, the performing arts potentially does still have a really, we are still, what AI can't replicate is our bodies. We are embodied things moving through a world, and that is still something that needs to be fundamentally appreciated. And I think that even if the distraction of our attention economy, people are starting to return to and want more. But to answer your question more practically, like there's sometimes I see glimmers of that, like how can you create experiences that engage and interact with people? I mean, write a great play. I think that, people will watch it. But don't do concept art. Don't do voiceover. Editing. Definitely don't do translation anymore. There's certain things that it's just doing very well and wiping out. And what's also, I think, really damaging, especially to concept art and illustrators and painters, is that the medium in which they would find engagement in customers, like Instagram, is eating up their style in the first place. So if you were like, I've got this absolutely amazing new artistic aesthetic, it's like, how do you keep it off the internet so that they can buy a unique piece from you? You know what I mean? Otherwise, it will very quickly be able to mimic that style. And, it's really going to undercut what would be considered a vital part of a production process. But I would say, what did I say at the beginning? Abandon hope, all you enter. I would say this is the time to react, to pick it apart, to leave some of this technology on the side and focus on like core human-to-human interaction. There's always been fundamental problems with the mass distribution of media and being a passive consumer. AI has just really emphasized some of like the things that we've been supposed to be taking seriously, I think, for decades, So I encourage individual literacy with the technology and thoughtful engagement, but the landscape is fundamentally altered, and especially within a capitalistic environment for the creation and distribution of this media.
So I'm going to try to give some positive advice. He left. He's over there. Okay, great. So I thought about it for a minute. I agree with what all's being said here, but still, artists persist, right? And you're not going anywhere. So how do you persist? And I'd suggest to ask, what's especially human about what you do in your art? Like whether you're a juggler or a stage actor or a musician, whatever the process is, especially comes from you, that is almost irreplaceable when it comes to other people, much less a computer. So whether it's you're writing stories from your personal experience in your childhood, nobody gives a damn about about an AI's childhood. It's not real, right? That connection from a human to another person is something that we're still going to always value. Always. Even in mass production of goods, we still have our artisan, bespoke or whatever things that we still value as people. And I feel that's always going to be the case in the human space, where there's a lot of garbage out there where AI-generated commercials and whatnot, blah, 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 but we still have the need for connection and through art. So my route is through improvisation. I think that's an especially human for now thing. But whatever it is that you feel like, not just helps discern you from a computer, but from the other people in the room or in your field, I think that's trying to really reflect on that and latch on to that humanness of what you do, I think can be something that helps you ride the storm.
So we are, unfortunately, at time. I apologize to our people in the queue. The conversation here is just so rich and so robust. I want to thank all of y'all for being here. Please go into the app and leave some comments about this panel, not so that we feel good, but as a member of the conference committee, I can say we really do go in and read that and use that data to help shape conversations of future conferences. So for this and for any other session you go to, just know those words are really read and go into shaping these conversations. To my panelists, thank y'all so much for having the courage to be here.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, y'all. Have a great conference.